lines are open once again, toll free 1-888-825-5254. And speaking of phones, let's say hello to our very own Andrew Babinski in the Kim Komando Show Man Cave.
Hey, Kim.
How's it going?
Good. So we've mentioned this, I don't know, like 3 times now on the show, and you kind of hinted towards it when we were talking about Facebook security in the second hour. But James in Northridge, California, has a couple of incidents where he's worried Facebook is listening to him through his telephone.
Yeah. I mean, so many people have been worried about over the years about their webcams, right?
Right.
So we take a little Post-it note here. You can see it a very high-tech way on my very own laptop here.
I just did mine because you asked me if I had a sticker on mine. I'm like, no. And you're like, why? Do it. You're stupid.
I didn't say you were stupid. I said that,
right.
you know.
That's the unofficial comment. I was just riffing. So now I have a piece of black tape over my camera.
So that this way, in case somebody wants to turn it on, people can look at it. They can see what's going on.
I mean, they're not going to see much. Me sitting there researching fantasy football stats, not very entertaining.
Eating Doritos.
James says there are 2 instances where he's having conversations, and then those things in those conversations show up on his Facebook feed.
Well, let's find out what they are. So what were you looking for, James? Or what were you guys talking about?
Hey, Kim and Andrew. It's great to speak with you both. The first one was a podcast. I was commuting to work, started listening to a podcast. I'd never listened to the podcast before, and a particular advertiser was mentioned in that podcast. It was for a website, and later that day, that particular advertiser, an ad for that product came up on my Facebook page, and I'd never been to that website. It was an obscure e-learning service,
and
that seemed really odd. And I guess it's possible that they
did some tag. Yeah, I was going to say they could have put a meta tag on the podcast. Is that what you were thinking?
I guess that's a possibility. It just seemed very odd for me. The other situation was a little more odd. I was in a room where some of my coworkers were discussing a very particular, very specific celebrity, and I didn't go online and search that celebrity. Later that day, an ad popped up on my Facebook page promoting a television show that celebrity is appearing in.
That's pretty creepy.
And that is really odd.
Yeah.
So I think if anyone's listening to me, they're probably really, really bored. but it has. I'll tell you this: it's in a humorous kind of way. It's actually caused me to almost censor myself when I'm talking to my partner. If I'm talking about something privately,
Do you whisper?
Lower my level, and I whisper, and I crack a joke with Dave and say, "Nobody's listening." And curious to know your thoughts on all that.
Now, what does David think? Does he think you're nuts?
David thinks I'm nuts no matter what.
Okay.
He does. He does think it's a little odd. A couple weeks ago, we were looking at battery-operated lawnmowers, and he hadn't searched for them. I searched for them on my computer, but we were talking verbally about it, and sure enough, on his Facebook feed. After that,
the riding lawnmower ads come up.
A lawnmower came up as an ad, and he came in there and he's like, "You would not believe this." So I don't know. That could have been a coincidence because we're in summer and people buy lawnmowers and stuff. But
but it's when you start adding it all up, and then also sometimes you start seeing things that maybe you didn't see before. You're like, well, maybe this is all tied together.
Exactly.
Facebook says that they do listen in on conversations. If you have your phone nearby and if the app is open, they say, I don't know if I believe them, they say that it's not for advertising purposes. They say they just want to help you post things easier and faster and maybe give you the type of content that you might want to consume. They also say that when you have the app open, that they're listening in the background to any TV shows that you're maybe watching or any music that you guys are listening to. So in order to turn it off, you can go into settings, which you might want to do anyway. You have an iPhone or Android?
It's an iPhone. And actually, I did that yesterday. I turned off the microphone.
Oh, you did?
I thought that I had already turned it off, but I went back in there and checked it again yesterday.
Back on?
And it was on. And so maybe I didn't turn it off, but I turned it off yesterday for sure.
Well,
so
but even though you turned it off, that may not be your fault, James, because if it updated overnight, they could have turned it back on.
And I think there has been an update now that you mentioned that.
This gets back to really what we were talking about, Andrew and I were talking about in the last hour, about Facebook and privacy and all the stuff that we have put out there. and all the data that they're accumulating with or without our necessary know-how. I mean, it was probably a couple of years ago. You know, the Xbox has that camera called the Kinect, right?
Yes.
And it was probably like 3 or 4 years ago, a spokesperson for Microsoft came out and they said, you know, with the Microsoft Kinect, we can see everything that's in your family room. It's like, oh, you can? They said, yes. And so we know that if it's a family of 2 or a family of 6, based upon what the living room looks like or family room, and whether it's a nice couch or it's a crappy couch, or if they have a view of the city or if they have a view of the parking lot. And they asked why, and they said, well, because then we can serve targeted advertising. That guy was never heard from ever again. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, we don't know where he went, and that was never said publicly ever again. And then Microsoft did come out and say, well, that's not exactly what we do. So,
well, one of the concerns I have is that even if Facebook is not listening and not targeting ads and things like that, it does put this topic out there that other smartphone apps
right.
may start doing it.
Or they already are doing it.
Exactly.
Because
people don't know about it.
And that's why I'm glad you called in today, because it does bring the awareness up that if you go into settings, you go into privacy, and not only just look at the microphone, look how many different apps that you have given permission to your camera or to your contacts or to your email or your GPS location. And that's where, when you go into those settings, that's where you can go ahead and you can slide it. You know, as you said, David, you slide it David, your partner, just you slide it, and so that it's no longer green, and then that app does not have access to it. But Facebook, they said they are, and so if you have the Facebook app on your phone, especially the Messenger app, make sure that you check those privacy and security settings. Thank you again so much for your calling. I'm sure we enlightened a whole bunch of people from coast to coast. You have something, Andrew? You're looking at me like you wanted to say something.
This isn't for me, I mean, but you were gonna describe to him how to turn it off on your phone. I mean, obviously, I've already done that. But could you give people the process of how to do that?
Would that person be like you?
No, because I work for the Komando show. There's no way that my microphone's on Facebook app.
You go settings, privacy.
Okay.
And then once you hit privacy, you have a list of like your camera, your contacts, your microphone, your location, and everything.
Right.
And just open that up. It'll show you all the apps that have access to each individual thing. And then you just slide it over to the left.
I'll tell them. Thank you.
You got it.